Story recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain a sci-fi film called Equilibrium. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. Upon the conclusion of World War III, the survivors sought to create a world free of conflict by suppressing human emotions. In the city-state of Libria, the leaders, known as the Tetragrammaton Council, banned any material that could potentially evoke strong emotions. To enforce such a law, the council formed the Grammaton Cleric, highly trained soldiers tasked with hunting down and eliminating sense offenders. In a district known as the Nethers, Grammaton Cleric First Class John Preston takes part in a raid to stamp out members of the resistance group called the Underground. When the team comes across an unknown number of resistance members barricading themselves in a compound, they call Preston to deal with the persistent rebels. With firearms in both hands, Preston breaks the door down and waits in the dark until the rebels stop firing. As the insurgents listen for movement, Preston shoots the rebels in all directions with great accuracy and efficiency. After killing all the insurgents at the compound, they search the buildings for materials rated EC10, objects known to have high emotional content. Hidden under the floorboards, they find Leonardo da Vinci's painting of the Mona Lisa. After verifying its authenticity, Preston orders the men to set it ablaze along with other forbidden materials. On their way back to the headquarters, Preston notices that his partner, Errol Partridge, had taken a copy of the collection of poems by William Butler Yeats, so he asks him why he didn't leave it to the evidentiary team. Partridge tells him that he wanted to personally log it himself because the team doesn't always keep proper records of forbidden materials. Throughout the city, Father, the reclusive leader of Libria, makes his appearance in giant video screens to encourage citizens to dispense with their emotions by taking their daily dose of Prozium. He reminds the people to destroy any material that would tempt them to feel strong emotions, noting that they finally achieved peace by getting rid of such objects. Citizens cheer for Father as he concludes his speech declaring victory against hatred, war, and human nature itself. When Preston gets back to the cleric's headquarters, he reports to Vice Consul DuPont, the highest-ranking member of the Tetragrammaton Council next to Father. DuPont commends Preston for his keen ability to sense when someone feels strong emotions and asks Preston how he managed to acquire the unique skill. Preston explains that he has learned to think like the offenders by putting himself in their position. When DuPont asks about his family, Preston reveals that his wife has been arrested and incinerated for being a sex offender some years ago. DuPont warns him that it was an egregious error on Preston's part because he wasn't able to sense that his own wife had been feeling strong emotions. After leaving DuPont's office, Preston looks at the records at the evidentiary department to find out if Partridge has logged the EC10 book in his possession. When he learns that Partridge has not turned in any evidence for weeks, Preston goes to the Nethers to find him. Soon, Preston comes across Partridge reading Yeats' book inside an abandoned church. When Preston confronts him, Partridge admonishes Preston for using words to describe emotions he never felt. Partridge laments that everything that makes them human has been extinguished because of the Council's mandates. Preston reminds him that there is no war and murder in the new world that the Council has created, but Partridge contends that he'd gladly pay a high price as long as humans are free to feel emotions. Partridge slowly reaches for his gun. Preston points his firearm at him and shoots Partridge in the head as he covers his face with Yeats' book. Partridge is immediately replaced by a career-driven cleric named Brandt. After witnessing Preston kill his old partner, Brandt tells Preston that he hopes to be as uncompromising as he was. When Preston gets home, his son, Robbie, tells him that he saw another boy crying earlier and asks if he should notify the authorities. Preston tells him that he should report the incident without question. In his sleep, Preston dreams about his wife when she was arrested for suspicion of being a sex offender. When the police barged into their home, Preston quickly disarmed two men. Tell him that his wife has been charged with a sex offense, and they have a warrant to arrest her. When he puts his weapon down, his wife kisses him and tells him not to forget her. Preston wakes up in the morning and stares at his wife's empty bed. As he prepares to brush his teeth, he accidentally drops a vial of Prozium on the floor, so his son tells him to stop by the Equilibrium Center later to get a replacement. When he arrives at the center, he learns that the office is temporarily closed due to terrorist activity. When Brandt fetches him at the center, Preston doesn't mention that he wasn't able to replace his dose. Preston and Brandt proceed to raid the house of a sex offender named Mary O'Brien. Inside a hidden room, they discover an extensive collection of forbidden items. Knowing that she would be executed, Mary grabs an officer's gun and aims it at Preston. Brandt tries to shoot her, but Preston stops him, arguing that they still need her to tell them who her associates are. During the interrogation, Preston asks Mary about her acquaintances, but she deflects by asking Preston about his purpose for living. Preston tells her that his purpose is to serve Libria and safeguard the continuity of society. Mary is unsatisfied with his response, arguing that his purpose is circular because he is only living to continue his existence. She then points out that without emotions, Preston is just a ticking clock. When he wakes up one morning, Preston frantically peels away the tint on the window in his room to see the sunrise. After admiring the beauty of the sun rising across the city, he rushes to the bathroom and loads a dose of Prozium in the syringe gun, but he refrains from shooting the drug into his system. On his way to the headquarters, he drops several vials of Prozium on the ground. Inside the office, he starts rearranging his desk as Father encourages them on the video monitor to forget about their individuality and embrace conformity. When Brandt asks him what he's doing, Preston tells him that he's only trying to optimize his space. Brandt tells Preston that they have an operation to eliminate sex offenders in the Nether. During the raid, a man rushes towards Preston, so Brant shoots the rebel. Preston catches the insurgent and inadvertently stares into his eyes as his life slowly withers away. When he drops the rebel to the ground, he is distraught by the sight of blood in his hand. After the officers kill all the rebels, Preston discovers a secret room filled with forbidden items. As he inspects the objects in the room, he comes across a vinyl record of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony and plays it on the turntable. Upon hearing the first few bars of the symphony, Preston drops a snow globe on his hand and starts to cry. While the team burns down the contraband inside the building, Brant asks Preston why he didn't turn over a book of nursery rhymes to the evidentiary team. Preston tells him that he wants to log it himself because the team doesn't always do it properly. An officer interrupts them to tell them that they've found dogs at the compound. Brant orders the officers to exterminate all the dogs, but Preston raises an objection. However, Preston cannot think of a good reason for his disapproval, so he tells them to go ahead with the execution. While the officers shoot the animals one by one, a puppy runs to Preston. When he grabs it, he stares at the puppy as it licks his face. Preston reluctantly turns it over to the officers, but he suddenly takes it back and says it should be tested for diseases. During a meeting with DuPont, Preston raises his concerns about the ruthless slaughter of insurgents, arguing that they should be apprehended and interrogated instead. DuPont points out that Father has released a mandate ordering officers to exterminate all rebels without any processing. He stresses that they should follow Father's orders even though they might disagree with them. Inside the evidentiary department, he inspects Mary's effects and takes a ribbon. He then goes back to the Nether to release the dog that he rescued earlier. When the dog wouldn't leave him, he decides to put it back in the trunk. Soon, officers arrive at the area and ask him for identification. The ranking officer asks Preston for the keys to take a look at the trunk, but the officer soon recognizes Preston, so he apologizes and hands him back the keys. But before Preston could take it, the officers hear the dog yelping inside the trunk. Upon seeing the dog, the officers order Preston to get down on his knees. Preston attacks the men and uses their own weapons to kill them. As other men arrive to apprehend him, Preston takes out his weapons and fires at them relentlessly, killing them all. Back at home, Preston hides a few vials of Prozium behind the mirror before going to the headquarters. While he's practicing his sword fighting skills, Brant interrupts him and starts sparring with him. Brant taunts Preston by telling him that he knows that Preston is thinking of the murders in the Nether the previous night. Brant says that he is glad that it happened because Father had ordered a crackdown on the resistance. After the sparring session, Brant tells Preston to get ready because they will be conducting another raid in the Nether in Sector 7. During the operation, Preston comes across a group of rebels, but he lets them go and leads them to a corridor to hide from the police and the clerics. The insurgents reluctantly follow Preston, but he soon gains their trust when they see him defending them. When another group of officers arrives to ask Preston about the gunshots, Preston pulls out his weapons and starts attacking them while the rebels escape. After killing the officers, Preston looks for the rebels, only to find them lined up for execution. Brant asks Preston to shoot the men, but Preston argues that they should be interrogated. Brant surmises that Preston must be low on ammo, so he gives him his weapon, insisting that offenders are supposed to be shot on sight. Preston takes the weapon, but he hesitates to shoot. Finally, he hands the firearm back to Brant, saying it will be better for him to hold on to his own gun. Brant orders the police officers to execute the rebels. Preston tries to keep a straight face as he walks away in disappointment from failing to save the insurgents' lives. Preston reports to DuPont to tell him that he's ready to become Father's instrument against the resistance. After the meeting, Preston goes to the morgue to ask for Partridge's effects before burning the body in the incinerator. Inside a thin metal case, he finds several pictures of people unfamiliar to him, but one photo with the word freedom written at the back catches his attention. Preston visits Mary and asks her about Partridge. Mary, however, contends that she doesn't hang around clerics, so Preston shows Mary a photo of her and Partridge together. When Preston mentions that he's the one who killed Partridge, Mary grabs a pen and tries to stab him. Preston blocks the attack and stares at her eyes while pinning her down. After releasing his grip on Mary, Preston deduces that they were lovers. As Preston continues to gather clues about Partridge's involvement with the resistance, he learns that his former partner used to meet regularly with a man named Jurgen. When he discovers a secret room inside a school in Block 42, Jurgen emerges and tells him that they've been watching him. Jurgen takes Preston underground and lets him see the activities of the people living there. To find out where his loyalties lie, Jurgen puts Preston under a polygraph to make sure he feels strong emotions. When Jurgen mentions Mary, the vibrations on the polygraph machine become stronger. Jurgen discloses that he knows Preston carries Mary's ribbon in his pocket and frequently smells it when no one's looking. Jurgen asserts that Preston's feelings will only be satisfied if he allows himself to fall into Mary. Preston informs Jurgen that Mary will be incinerated the next day. Later, Jurgen warns Preston that emotions can be destructive without restraint, so some members of the resistance are forced not to feel anything. Preston asks Jurgen what he can do for the resistance, so Jurgen urges him to kill Father. After leaving the underground, police officers arrest Preston and take him to DuPont, who tells him that he heard rumors that a cleric has decided to stop taking Prozium. When he asks Preston what he's been doing with his time lately, Preston tells him that he's attempting to contact the resistance. He warns that the council will be doomed once the underground compromises the clerics, so Preston promises to double his efforts in infiltrating the rebels. When he gets home, he leaves another vial inside the mirror and watches his children sleep. Robbie wakes up and sees him holding the syringe gun. Preston explains that he's only trying to make sure that Robbie is taking his daily dose. When he meets with Mary the next day, she realizes that he's not been taking his regular doses. Mary senses that Preston is lost and confused, so she reaches out her hand to him, despite the risk of the camera seeing her. Soon, Preston meets up with Jurgen again to tell him that assassinating father would be impossible because the reclusive leader hasn't met with anyone face to face in quite a while. Jurgen argues that Preston is trained for such an occasion. Preston, however, is still unsure that anything will change once father is dead. Jurgen assures him that the underground network will take action to destroy Prozium labs around the city. He stresses that their cause will be won by human nature if they manage to disrupt the Prozium supply even by just one day. Due to Jurgen's determination, Preston agrees to assassinate father despite the lack of means to do it. As Preston is about to leave the underground, Jurgen warns him not to see Mary because it will only make it hard for him to complete his new mission. Preston goes to the office and watches the preparation for the execution on the video monitors. Later on, he decides to watch footage of his wife's execution. Distraught by his lack of reaction at that time, Preston runs to the incineration chamber to save Mary. However, when he arrives, the executioner tells him that the machine turbines have already been started. If they open the door, the turbines will cause an explosion on the streets. Preston holds back the tears from his eyes as he listens to the countdown to Mary's incineration. When he breaks down and cries outside the building, Brandt arrests him and takes him to DuPont. Brandt tells the vice counsel that Preston has been involved with a woman charged with sense crime, and he was also the one who killed the officers in the Nether. Preston reminds DuPont about his mission to expose the traitor among the clerics and claims that he has now brought the man to him. He then tells DuPont that Brandt is the traitor that he's been looking for. When DuPont checks the gun used to kill the police officers at the Nether, the report reveals that it was Brandt's gun. Brandt looks at his firearm and learns that he has Preston's gun in his possession. He realizes that Preston switched the firearms when he asked Preston to execute the rebels. However, Preston tells DuPont that Brandt took his firearm when he arrested him. DuPont orders the men to take Brandt to the Hall of Destruction for summary judgment and eventual combustion. Later, DuPont notifies Preston that he will order a team to conduct a search on his house because the law requires it. Preston agrees, but he tells DuPont that he's disappointed that he hasn't still met father despite being an instrument for the destruction of the underground. DuPont reminds him that father never grants an audience to anyone. Preston runs back home to take the vials of Prozium hidden behind the mirror as the police start searching the house. But much to his surprise, the vials are no longer there. Not long, his son enters the bathroom and shows him the vials in his hand, telling Preston to be more careful in the future. Robbie then reveals that he and his sister have stopped taking Prozium since their mother was executed. Preston meets up with the underground and calls the council to tell them that he has located the resistance. On the day of his meeting with father, the proctor tells him that he must still undergo a test before meeting the reclusive leader. After surrendering his weapon, he undergoes a polygraph test. The man conducting the test asks him the easiest way to take away a weapon from a Gramadan cleric. Before he could respond, Brandt whispers the answer to his ear, saying, "You ask him for it." Father addresses Preston over the video screen, saying Brandt's arrest was a mere ploy to make Preston feel like he had won. Father tells him that he had been trying to infiltrate the underground, but he realizes that he needs a man that will think and feel like the rebels. When father points out that Preston was the only man who has such an ability, Preston is puzzled because he has never met father before. Father then reveals himself to be DuPont and discloses that the real father had died years ago. The council has elected him to replace father and continue his traditions. Preston, infuriated by the deception, pulls out the guns he concealed in his sleeves and starts shooting at the men in the room. Preston warns DuPont that he's coming for him and goes on a rampage, shooting every guard that gets in his way. When Preston reaches DuPont's room, Brandt is there standing by the vice counsel's side. After he swiftly kills more of DuPont's guards, Brandt engages him in a sword fight. When Brandt takes a swing at him, he strikes Brandt with 3 quick slashes, killing Brandt instantly. As he drops to the ground, his slashed face falls off. DuPont grabs a firearm and attacks Preston, but Preston manages to grab a gun from the floor and fends off DuPont's attacks. Despite DuPont's skills, Preston defeats him and takes away his weapon. Fearing death at the hand of Preston, DuPont pleads with him, confessing that he also feels emotions just like him and the rebels. DuPont then asks Preston if killing him would be worth the price of guilt, knowing that he has killed a man with feelings. In response, Preston shoots DuPont in the head, saying he'll pay the price gladly. Before leaving the building, Preston destroys the machines broadcasting father's messages across Libria. Soon, bombs start exploding in Prozium factories all over the city, signaling the rebels that it's time to rise against their tyrannical rulers. Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.